Hey guys, so we got another one for you today. I want you to read through this and really think about it. I think they do a good job of talking about how we see the flag, how that's changed, how we protest, and how we, show that we're proud to be an American, right? I think to a lot of people, the idea of burning the American flag is an ultimate disrespect, but to many, it was a way of showing that America could do better. It was a way of protesting nonviolently when their buddies were being sent off to die in Vietnam, a war that was pretty messed up. We have here, a big old show of America. This type of event, this kind of football America showmanship, is actually pretty recent. This is new in my time. In the past, the footballers would not actually be on the field for the Star Spangled Banner. They would sing the Star Spangled Banner. They wouldn't quite do it this big. The footballers came out on the field after the Star Spangled Banner was played. And they were in the locker room for the longest time. It wasn't until after the 9/11 that they did such a big that this became a deal. Okay, so September 11th and the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, this became a rallying cry for nationalism. And when that happened, I think it was President Bush asked for, I don't know if he specifically asked or maybe they just decided to, the National Football League decided to start making a bigger display of American unity. And so it's interesting that it's relatively recent, within 20 years, and yet, Colin Kaepernick, when he was trying to protest police brutality and the killing of black men, innocent black men in police custody, he took a knee. He didn't stand for the national anthem, and yet he got all kinds of trouble for that. Is that the right time to protest? Is it okay for these people to use their voice to protest something that they see as an injustice? It's a shame that I think that took so much more of the conversation was whether or not he should kneel or not, as opposed to the conversation that he had meant to start, which was the issue on policing. Anyway, got a really interesting sort of stuff here. I think talking about what was disrespectful now, but was considered patriotic back then. How we see the flag, how the flag has changed, and how people have kind of modified the flag. The restoration of the flag. It's interesting to think about. I do want to go here. This is exactly what I was talking about last week. Proclamation of 1763, okay? This was and I would argue, the main point for why we had a revolution, okay? Proclamation of 1763 says settlers cannot go past this line, that this land is reserved for Indians, okay? The English have taken over this land. They're supposed to control it, but they have made peace with the natives here and the First Nation peoples, and they are trying to maintain that peace. Pontiac proved war is expensive, really, really expensive. And the English do not have the resources to get into another fight with the native folks, okay? So what happens is we have the Quartering Act, okay, where the settlers or the colonists are asked to house their own policemen. The people who are sent there, the soldiers who are sent there to keep the colonists out of native land. Okay. This idea of taxation without representation we'll see over and over again. Okay. The English had this huge war debt, and they're trying to figure out ways to figure that out. Now, first off, the Sugar Act was actually a good one. That was one that the colonists were not upset about. That just lowered the tax. And the idea here is one is a fiscal policy we still use today, is this idea that by lowering the taxes, you can decrease the amount of illegal activity around it. Okay, if taxes are so high that you can double your money by smuggling, you're going to try smuggling. If the taxes are lower and the difference between smuggling and not smuggling is not a huge difference, you're not going to take that risk to smuggle and potentially lose all of your money, as well as potentially your life or get thrown in prison, if for just a few bucks. So by lowering the taxes here, more people actually imported the way they were supposed to. Okay. Import is when you bring things into the country. Okay. So the colonies would make rum, and they would bring in the sugar, and then they would produce it in the colonies. The Currency Act, this one was more controversial, and the main reason why this one was so controversial is because the English did not do a great job of rolling it out. It would not have been such an issue if they had the correct amount of paper money and gold and silver in the colonies at the time. But as it was, there became a shortage of physical money, and that became a real big issue. So that's a way of driving prices down in a way that's not helpful. So these things this specifically is causing a little bit of issue. Some people are a little upset. They're mostly at this point upset again about the Quartering Act and the Proclamation of 1763. But it isn't until the Stamp Act that you really see people being upset. The Stamp Act was really poorly done, and it was very, very upsetting to folks. It became a thing where even if you're trying to follow the rule by using the stamp, you can only pay with gold and silver coins, but they're pretty rare in the colonies, so people wouldn't have the gold or silver coins they needed in order to even buy the dang stamp. Okay, and the stamp, which is just a stamp, that you'd hit, is basically a they would just mark it saying that you've paid the tax on this paper material. Part of this, too, was because printed materials were growing massively. The colonists were very literate, okay? Remarkably literate, and they always wanted something to read, and reading was really taking off. And one of the things that the Stamp Act was trying to stop was seditious material, because one of the things that was coming out, because people are upset about the Proclamation of 1763, is they are writing and creating material that is, calling King George a dummy or being critical of the English. And so the Stamp Act says, well, if you don't have our stamp, you can't print it, and if you print something that is making fun of the English, you're definitely not going to get a stamp, so it's going to be illegal. Okay, so this was partly to try to stop the colonists from writing certain things. So it was kind of a freedom of speech issue as well. Okay, this boycott, though, is going to be huge. Okay, the English need money. Okay, and what happens is if all of these Americans are doing without, and they're not buying things from the mother country, they're not buying things from England, then suddenly none of this makes any sense, because now they're not making any money. So this became a huge issue, which was a huge part of how the Stamp Act was canceled. Okay, Benjamin Franklin, very interesting character. The join or die. Okay, now that snake is basically, let's show you a different picture of it. Oops, sorry. This is that same snake. Okay? This is the colonies, okay? And the idea is that this is the snake, okay, and all of its different parts. Okay, we got South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, which one's that? Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and the North England colonies, okay? The New England colonies. This was made during the French and Indian War because of the disastrous beginning to the French and Indian War, where we were not working together. But it ultimately turns into the symbol of American Revolution, when the different colonies are like, we have to unite as a nation, otherwise we'll be crushed. Okay. Yeah, the colonial protests grow. These Townshend Acts become pretty egregious. The writs of assistance and these search warrants, one of the reasons why they suck so bad is because of how many people actually were smuggling, and so more smugglers were being found out. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the main takeaways here. We'll get to the Boston Massacre last time. They talk about my boy John Locke. Okay, we've mentioned him over and over again. Yeah, I think that's the main things to take away from here. So, have a good one, my dudes.